what is the difference between an array and an array list?
So we kind of touched on this in our last video.
Yep.
I got a little carried away on generics. So arrays are our core, root, bare metal way of getting a collection of items. I'm using the word collection very liberally here. Mm-hmm. They've been around forever, way before C#.
Right.
And they're lightweight, performant, and they're at the core of the language. Mm-hmm. They're not an add-on that somebody had to write in.
Yeah.
That said, they're rather restrictive. So
Okay.
right here, you can see you've made an array. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items in the array.
And 5 commas.
And 5 commas, which you did just to annoy me.
No, actually, the IntelliSense put that in there.
That last comma, I don't know what it's doing there. It's not required, but it doesn't throw an error anymore. It used to.
Yep.
So the bad thing about an array is that it cannot change size. Mm-hmm. If we want to make a new array, we can. We would say we want to make an array with 6 items. Let's do it. We'll do it, right? So we can do an array, and we can say, just go ahead and new it up. Let's just say array equals, instead of giving it a fixed value, let's say equals new int open bracket 6.
It's really
It really wants you to...
really.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to confuse all the newbie programmers, we all know that arrays are 0-based. So
Yep.
6 items is 0 through 5.
Yep.
So we can do, there's a built-in function, a built-in object, in C# called array, capital A, which has a bunch of functionalities. We can do dot off of that, and we can use the copy functionality. Mm-hmm. And you can see how monotonous this gets. Oh, that'll work. That's pretty close. Oh, never mind. Where'd it go? IntelliSense, come on. So source array would be ints.
Okay.
Destination array would be ints2.
Well, it was there for a second.
There's a bunch of overloads for how you do this, but we're just going to copy, so we need to pass it. I'm just going to hard code it and say 5 values.
This?
Yep. And now we can set ints equal to ints2 just to get it back into the original variable.
Okay.
I'm sorry how monotonous this is.
Ints?
Yeah, ints equals ints2.
Okay. It was there too for a second. Boom.
So now we've made a new array that's 1 bigger. We've copied everything over, and we've set the new array back equal to the old array. So ints is now an array with 6 objects in it. Man, wasn't that difficult. And not only that, if it was difficult with 6 items, not that the code gets any longer, but if it was 1,000 items or 1,000,000 items, it starts to become a real drag on the system.
Yeah.
So arrays are still the core of almost everything, but we have some other classes that we've wrapped around it that make this a lot easier. ArrayList was one of the earliest ones. So we can say ArrayList, call it AL1 or something like that. Of course, it looks like all when you do that. AL1 equals new ArrayList.
Yep.
And an ArrayList works very similar to a generic list if you've ever used one. So we can say AL1 dot add.
Okay.
And we can pass it the number 1.
There you go.
And we can do it again and pass it the number 2.
Yep.
And we didn't have to pre-size it.
Okay.
Now, for those of you who remember our string builder video that we did in this series earlier, it works very similar to that under the covers. In reality, it's made an array of, I'm just guessing, but let's say 16 items. Mm-hmm. But it keeps a number. It knows only 2 of the spaces are used.
Yeah.
When you get to the, let's say, the 16th item and you go to add the 17th item in, it has to do all the same work we did. It makes a new array that's now twice as big, let's say 32, copies everything over, adds that 17th item, and now you got room for 15 more. But at least it hides that from you, and it doesn't do it every time you add an item. It only does it every once in a while when you add an item, because it doubles in size every time.
Yeah, I think we need to. I'd like to go back a little bit. Okay.
Sure. Back up.
So we're going to make this with 2 in it, right?
Okay.
And I see what we're doing, but if I did this, and is there an ad? Yeah, oh no, wait, hold on. No, okay, yeah. I'm just the idea of that array int 3, right, only has 2 things. You cannot put any more in that without it. Where
without renewing it up.
Without renewing it and making it big and redoing the whole thing. I guess you did cover that. I just wanted the array list is a little bit more.
It gives you the illusion of flexibility.
Yeah, I guess.
Now the problem with the array list is unlike the array.
I was going down a different path than I just said.
Unlike the
You've already
array,
got it covered.
Unlike the array where we said the type is int,
Mm-hmm.
an array list doesn't have a type.
Okay, yeah, that's something
and
different.
It's such a dinosaur. Array list is actually from before generics.
Mm-hmm.
It was C# beta. Like,
Gotcha.
Literally, it goes back to the dawn of .NET. It doesn't have a concept of a type. So if you look on that a1.add, if you do another a1.add down there,
Mm-hmm. AO,
AAL1, yeah, .add,
which is the word, yeah, gotcha.
and you look at this open parenthesis and look at the syntax, it's expecting a nullable object.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's no overloading. It's just that's what comes in. And because behind the scenes, it's an array of object, which if you also remember our boxing and unboxing video,
Right.
storing value types in there is costly.
Yeah.
It is a dinosaur, and I would not recommend using ArrayList. And if there's I don't know if that was the takeaway from the question, but it's very old.
So so let's go. If somebody asks you the questions, what's the difference between? I guess what's the difference between an array and array list? Easily, you can say an array is type based, correct?
It's typed and it's fixed size.
Yeah, where an array list gives you the flexibility of growing without not knowing exactly how big it is. But I guess the big, huge disadvantage is it's not type-based.
It's not type-based.
Which
I
can
would
be
say
dangerous, I feel like.
the real takeaway from this, for anybody watching, forget the interview part of this. Just I think the real takeaway is anything an array list can do, a generic list can do better, right? Because literally there is nothing that a generic list can't do better than an array list.
Right.
There's no, well, is this a situation for an array list or is this a situation for a generic list? That there's no question. It's always a generic list. Now, a generic list versus an array, there are times when you might want one over the other because they do have different performance advantages. Mm-hmm. But an array list is just a dinosaur, and it can do some neat things like mixing types. If you think that's a feature.
But couldn't you do that with a list and just make it object?
You could make, if you wanted an array list, you could make a generic list of type object.
Okay.
Hadn't thought of that one, but yeah, you can do that too.
Thank you for watching that video from F12 Programming. Please remember to like and subscribe. That does so much for us in the ratings. You have no idea. Also, don't forget to comment below. I hope you enjoyed, and good luck coding.